Given the vastness of space, intelligent alien life is not just probable, it is surely inevitable.
I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that they're out there. In the visible universe, our telescopes have the range to see 100 billion galaxies. Well, how many stars are there in the visible universe? Count them. 100 billion times 100 billion. You have to be supremely arrogant to believe that we are the only ones in town.
But even if intelligent life exists on other worlds, could aliens really cross the vastness of space to reach our planet?
For those scientists who say that the distances between stars is so great that no flying saucer or UFO will ever visit us, I say, wait a minute. Civilizations that can reach us from outer space are not 100 years ahead of us. They would be perhaps 100,000 to 1,000,000 years ahead of us.
And there may be good reason why such an alien race might decide to invade our world.
We scientists realize that our universe is dying. It is expanding out of control. It is blowing out, and billions of trillions of years from now, we will have the last nice day. The Earth will freeze over, the night sky will be totally dark, and the whole universe will be plunged into absolute cold. There is only one escape from the death of the universe itself, and that is to leave the universe.
Leave the universe? Crazy as this sounds, many scientists now believe there may be more than one universe, perhaps connected together by black holes. And if the aliens emerge from such a black hole, there's no reason to suppose they're going to be our friends.
In the films, whenever we encounter extraterrestrials, they're always more or less at about our level, but the facts are that if we do pick up a signal from another world, it's going to be coming from a society that's far beyond our own.
These super-intelligent alien beings will be far superior to mere humans. To them, we will appear little more than a plague of fleas to be cleansed from the planet.
When you walk down a country road and you see an anthill, do you go down to the ants and say, I bring you trinkets, I bring you beads, I bring you nuclear energy, I bring you DNA technology, take me to your leader? Or do you simply step on a few of them?
As the battle for planet Earth unfolds, there can surely be only one possible outcome.
Having visitors from a more advanced civilization is usually not so good for the beings being visited. I think that if they actually came here, I personally would head for the hills.
The trouble is, by the time the aliens are finished with us, there may not be any hills left to head for. Whilst the threat of alien invasion may seem unlikely, our next apocalypse may already be upon us. Wrap up warm. There have been 8 ice ages in the last 750,000 years, and by ice age, we don't just mean a spot of chilly weather. The next one could come any time. Surprisingly, some say it could even be triggered by global warming. The Arctic ice packs are currently melting, making the North Atlantic less salty. This may have dramatic consequences on the flow of the world's great ocean currents.
The oceans absorb heat in the tropics, and the ocean currents transport that heat away from the tropics northwards and southwards up to the high latitudes, and the ocean loses the heat there to the atmosphere, and so keeps the atmosphere at the high latitudes warmer.
If the North Atlantic becomes less salty, it will shut down the so-called Great Ocean Conveyor, or Gulf Stream, that is driven by the circulation of dense salty water falling to the bottom.
There is a possibility, because we know it's happened in the past, that the circulation might actually switch off completely over quite a short period, maybe 10 or 20 years.
This apparently would cause a sudden and dramatic climate change with terrible consequences.
If you imagine the world would be adapting to an expected global warming, and then suddenly the climate change goes in the opposite direction, the impacts of this kind of change would be really substantial.
Really substantial indeed, causing as it might a large proportion of the northern hemisphere to ice over and remain that way for 70 to 100,000 years. First, crops will fail. Next, all megafauna will die. Humans will inevitably be frozen to extinction.
I wouldn't say dying is great in any situation, but certainly hypothermia probably isn't quite as bad as you think it's going to be. The first symptom is really irrational behaviour. It's when you're doing things for no apparent reason whatsoever. After that, we're looking at people who are just not responding. They'll start to have uncontrollable fits of shivering. They'll start to lose all their coordination. They'll start to fall over, complaining of headaches, blurred vision. People start to go into a stupor. They collapse, they go into unconsciousness and a hypothermic coma.
At least Johnny thinks it's a good way to go. Sadly, the only thing to survive this global ice age will be tiny creatures we've never even heard of. That's it for now, you'll be relieved to hear. Coming up next, we're attacked by grey goo. We trigger global war, catch a space plague, and meet some scary children. Time to continue our cataclysmic countdown. It's important to be on your guard against global apocalypse. But what if you can't see it coming? In a famous 1959 lecture, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman predicted that one day scientists would be able to create microscopic machines constructed from single atoms. These minuscule atomic robots would be capable of rearranging other atoms to transform matter on an atomic level. 31 years later, a team of researchers took the first step to realizing this goal when they won a Nobel Prize for writing IBM. But it wasn't their spelling that impressed the judges. It was the fact that the letters were formed by arranging 35 single atoms. Part of that team was Jim Jamewski, who is now one of the leading scientists in the field of nanotechnology.
It's absolutely, at its root, a shift in philosophy. Everybody suddenly found themselves, from all fields, looking at the same thing. The atom and molecular basis of technology of life. You know, it requires great dedication, and you have to almost live inside the small thing that you never see. It can drive you kind of nuts.
Through nanotechnology, scientists are going to be able to completely re-engineer nature in ways and on a scale never before possible.
You know, I have a dream. Nanotechnology, and it's a cloud. And this cloud can move around, and it can clean up the dirt, the carbon monoxide, and it could be powered by sunlight. But the cloud could also perhaps go somewhere else and rain where you want it to rain. And it could move over perhaps a lake and pick up water. So I don't think we need to think always small with nanotechnology. We should be thinking big.
It was physicist Eric Drexler who first warned in 1986 of possible dangers from molecular nanotechnology in his book, Engines of Creation. Drexler imagined robotic molecular manufacturing systems, or assemblers. These nanoscale robots could be programmed to carry out all kinds of useful tasks, such as roaming the bloodstream, dissolving blood clots, and killing cancerous cells. But individual nanobots are too small to be very useful, so they'd have to be programmed to roam about, grabbing atoms to recreate themselves. But once they get started, how do you stop them? Before you know it, there's a vast fog of killer micro-robots eating all matter in its path and changing it into even more nanorobots. Soon, all carbon matter is transformed into grey goo. And this isn't the only concern.
So we know if you take a piece of material, maybe it's green, and we shrink it, and we shrink it, and we shrink it, it changes color. It's different chemically. So if we look in a book